All right, so I wanted to go over a little system that I set up that I think is pretty clever. By no means is it incredibly innovative. It's definitely been done before. But in case you haven't seen it, I think it might be applicable to some situations, especially when it comes to firewood processing and collecting and whatnot. So I got a bunch of logs over there that I'm going to turn into firewood. White birch isn't terribly good firewood, but in my opinion it's still worth doing if you can get it easily. But to give you an idea, that's the customer's house. I got the wood splitter right here, and I'm able to stack it right over there by that little patio. So it's a no-brainer just to have some wood to burn at the house. But there's this bank, tiny little ravine into a stream. So getting those logs over isn't super easy. But to make it easier and more efficient, those logs are right over there. I got a sling and my rigging line up in this tree. What I've been doing is putting a sling around a couple of logs, pulling it tight, hooking up my rigging line to it, and then pulling this with the tractor over the stream. And then they usually end up right over here or behind the tree, and then I just pull them just with the tractor and without the rigging line. I'll show you what that looks like. All right, so here's some of the logs. You can see I just kind of hooked this rope to myself and climbed up from up there. So now it's a straight shot to just pull them. All right, then I like to just take a sling, make sure I'm, more than about a third up the log, 2/3 up from the back of the log. And then this should squeeze them together, and then I'll hook my rigging line to this. I like to use this because these slings are really cheap, but they're really strong. And all the abrasion that's going to happen on this when it's getting dragged, I'd rather it happen to this than my rigging line. Poor little pine tree. All right, so as far as this end's concerned, it's ready to pull. All right, so now from this point, all I got to do is pull this line as tight as I can, and then use some sort of midline knot like an alpine butterfly to be able to hook this rope up to a carabiner on the pallet forks. And it's ready to pull. All right, and now once I get it past that little threshold, I just switch over to a regular old tow strap and hook that right up to the tractor. And just like that, we have a couple of logs that we could turn into firewood within 20 feet of a sawbuck and a wood splitter. I think that's pretty efficient. And now that area looks 2% cleaner. The reason that I'm cutting down all these birch trees is that a couple of years ago we had a pretty bad ice storm, and the weight of that ice bent over a bunch of these trees. Some were even like touching the ground. You could probably see the U shape on the log all the way to the right. Another reason that I'm going through the trouble of gathering these birch logs and turn them into firewood is that this little cluster of birch is right in the visual field of the customer's backyard. A lot of the time I'll just, pile up the brush and dice up the logs and then burn it later if it's in a hard to reach spot. I can't get like a chipper or something. Birch has a tendency to rot before it burns. So if I just left these logs laying on the ground anyway, they'll just soak up moisture and they'll just be sticking around for a while. So I'm going to have to do that with some of the ones that are really rotten already and aren't worth doing firewood with. But I figure the ones that we can get out of there, we might as well. Well, that's basically the gist of it. Obviously, there's a lot more logs, but I don't need to show you every single one of them. I hope this was helpful in some way, and if you made it all the way to the end, let me know the weirdest or sketchiest way you ever got firewood back to the woodyard. Thanks for watching.